After President Obama ejected 35 Russian diplomats from the U.S., Vladimir Putin rolled out a mirror retaliation, saying he's waiting for better ties with President-elect Donald Trump. This comes after U.S. intelligence agencies accused Russia of interfering in this year's presidential elections. We're going to hear from Maryland Senator Ben Cardin in just a moment, but first joining us from D.C. is Bloomberg's foreign policy reporter Nick Wadhams to give us the latest. Nick, what was your guys' reaction of this move today by President Putin to basically say, hey, we're not going to do anything?
Well, I think there are a couple of things going on here. One, he's really sort of opening the door for Donald Trump and also laying down a challenge for him, saying, okay, you've made these commitments during the course of your campaign to improve ties with us. Now I'm doing this. I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to expel American diplomats. So let's see if you make good on that promise. I mean, you know, the other calculation he may be making is that if he expels those American diplomats, I mean, it's only 3 weeks before Donald Trump comes into office. So by doing so, he would leave Donald Trump really no choice but to respond in a more hostile way. So he's very much, I think, looking toward January 20th and saying he wants to clear the slate for President Trump and basically put the Obama administration behind him.
Yeah, Nick, I mean, President Putin doesn't really lose anything by not retaliating here, right? And yet he might gain something. What could the president-elect do for him in return for this kindness that he's showing the Americans?
Well, I mean, from an image standpoint, this will likely play very well at home. He gets to look like the sort of cool, calm, steady hand, while President Obama looks like he's been lashing out. He looks hot-headed. He looks, you know, like he's got a bit of a temper. So Putin can sort of play it cool. And, you know, I mean, it was Michelle Obama who said, when they go low, we go high. You know, Vladimir Putin even used language sort of saying that they would take the high road in dealing with this, and sort of made this offhanded remark, you know, oh, by the way, we also wish President Obama and his family a happy holiday. So he's very much trying to sort of take the cool and calm approach to make Obama look a little bit sort of hot-headed by comparison.
Nick, just real quickly, when we're talking about what happened today, we basically had sort of two different opinions from Russia, right? What do you make of Putin overruling the earlier statement that they were going to do something about it?
Well, it's very difficult to know whether he was actually overruling his foreign minister. I mean, Putin is known to be very close with Sergei Lavrov. Sergei Lavrov is a diplomat who has been doing this for decades. He's considered a master of the craft. So it's difficult to know whether he actually overruled him or that was just sort of part of their optics and just sort of a grand strategy by the government to basically make Putin look good.
All right, Nick Wadhams, Bloomberg's foreign policy reporter. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring in now Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. He's the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he joins us from Sarasota, Florida. And our thanks to you, Senator. Did President Obama just hand the president-elect a gift by imposing these sanctions such that the president-elect can now roll them back should he wish to?
Well, first, let's realize it was Russia who caused this. They attacked us.
Sure.
They attacked us. It may have been by a mouse. Whether it's a MiG or a mouse, it's an attack. So the actions that President Obama took were required. I would hope that President Trump, when he takes office, will recognize it cannot be business as usual with Russia. I expect that Congress is going to take action. I'm going to be introducing 2 bills to deal with Russia. One, to deal with an independent investigation as to the extent of their attack against our country and how we can prepare ourselves. And secondly, additional sanctions that can be imposed against Russia, not only for its cyber attack on our system, trying to influence our elections, but also dealing with what they're doing in Crimea, in Europe, what they're doing in Syria.
If it was the correct course of action, Senator, why did it take so long?
Well, I think President Obama waited from the report from his advisors. That report was just obtained. I think he calculated as to what was the appropriate response. Part of it has not been made totally public, and he's indicated that may not be the end of the actions taken against Russia. And I can assure you Congress will want to weigh in as an independent branch on this issue.
And Senator, how do you figure out the sort of gravity of such an attack? Because obviously this is a pretty new sort of realm we're in here. And you say that there must be a response, there must be sanctions. How do you sort of gauge the degree to which those sanctions should go for something that we really don't have a lot of, history of?
It's a great point, and that's why I believe an independent commission should look into what Russia did to us, how they were able to attack us, how we can prepare ourselves against future types of attacks of a similar nature, and what would be the appropriate response for America to do in regards to Russia's attack. I think a commission could help us that.
Well, now, obviously, the president has decided what the appropriate response is, and he's happy with that for now. Why would you be introducing a bill to take that further? Why take a more hawkish stance versus Russia when, really, do we want to provoke Russia any further?
Well, Congress is an independent branch of government. We have our own responsibilities. We're the ones who set up the framework as to what the president can do. I'm not certain that the president has all the tools that he or she would need in order to respond to this type of circumstance should it happen in the future. So I think it's important for Congress to weigh in to make sure that we speak as well as the administration against a country that attacked us.
Senator Cardin, have you talked to Republicans about how they feel about furthering sanctions and whether or not they have any insight into whether or not Trump will go and repeal or undo whatever sanctions are put into place?
Well, that's an important point. What I'm doing will be done in a bipartisan manner. I expect that there will be Republicans and Democrats joining together in regards to additional sanctions. We've felt that the sanctions that were imposed in regards to Russia's invasion of Ukraine were important, but they need to be strengthened. Now we have the cyber attack. In addition, we have Russia complicitous in potential war crimes in regards to what's happening in Syria. All of that requires us on a bipartisan basis to make sure that we have appropriate sanctions against Russia.
Senator, what's your reaction to the potential, and as of now it's going ahead, ceasefire tomorrow night in Syria, brought about in part by the Russians?
Well, you know, we've heard this before. Russia has said many times that we're going to have ceasefires, and the next thing we know, that humanitarian convoys are attacked and people are killed. So we have not seen Russia deliver. We heard that we were going to have a ceasefire in regards to Ukraine with the Minsk agreements. Russia violated that. You can't believe what they say. Yes, we want a ceasefire. Yes, we need humanitarian access to help people who are in desperate need. And we'll do everything we can, including working with Russia, to achieve that. But I must tell you, we want to see action. We just don't want to see some more words.
Senator, let's talk about working with Russia, because you've been quoted saying you're deeply troubled by Rex Tillerson's stance on Russia and the new Secretary of State. Maybe I'm a simpleton, but help me figure out why we wouldn't want to have improved relations, or maybe have somebody in there that can work with these people and has experience with these people. When you look back at the Cold War, and really the hallmark of that very tense period, of course, was a lack of communication and secrecy.
Well, Mr. Tillerson will have a confirmation hearing early in January. We're going to have a chance to question him. Obviously, his experience in dealing with foreign powers is important, but can he separate his previous commercial interests and do what's important for America? There are going to be questions that we're going to want to ask during the confirmation process. We have that responsibility. So it doesn't disqualify him. It's just a matter of concern as to whether he can differentiate between a responsibility as the CEO of a major energy company and now being the Secretary of State, our top diplomat.
Do you still want to see his tax returns? Have we made any progress on that?
Yeah, absolutely, I want to see his tax returns. He has a complicated financial circumstance. He has never been vetted for a public office that I'm aware of, so he hasn't gone through any of the vetting process. What Senator Corker and I agreed to do is wait till we see his financials, and then I will make a judgment as to how important the tax returns are.
Can I also ask you a little bit about the potential repeal or replacement at some point of the Affordable Care Act? Senator, we had Jonathan Gruber on this morning, one of the architects of what's now in place in Massachusetts and around the country, the exchange system. And he said regarding Tom Price and his appointment to the cabinet that, there are no Republicans that'll join Democrats in blocking this appointment. Just have a listen.
I don't think there's been any Republicans who've spoken up against Tom Price, so I don't see how Democrats can block it. Obviously, he'd be a terrible appointment in the sense that he has made statements that are really incorrect and show a lack of basic understanding of how healthcare works in the U.S. I think the important thing to remember is just because someone's a doctor doesn't mean they understand the healthcare system.
What is the outlook, Senator, and what will you do in order to stop the repeal of Obamacare?
And Mr. Price will come before the Senate Finance Committee, and I'm a member of that committee, so I'll have a chance during the confirmation process to question him. In regards to the Affordable Care Act, it has been a success. It's not only been a success.
Even if we allow for that, the facts are that the Republicans are going to try and repeal all or some of it. How are you going to stop that happening when you won't even be able to stop the appointment of Tom Price?
Well, what we're going to do is by our voices and our votes, we're going to do everything in our power to protect the progress we've made under the Affordable Care Act. In my own state of Maryland, I've heard from our state health officials as to the impact if we repeal the Affordable Care Act. It's not only going to hurt those who are able to get affordable health coverage as a result of the Affordable Care Act. It's also going to hurt those who have had insurance, because they're now going to be required to pay more because of cost shifting. People who don't have health insurance or use our health care system. It's going to have a major impact.
Republicans disagree, Senator, with all due respect. Republicans disagree, and they will fight this.
Well, if they attempt to repeal the act, I think it's going to become more apparent. Until this date, there was no chance of it being repealed. Now I think people are starting to understand this may become real. So if you happen to be a small business owner and you're now worried whether you're going to be able to get affordable coverage in the future, if you're working for a big company and you want to go out on your own, but you have a spouse that has a health care issue and you don't know whether you'll be able to get insurance coverage, these are real problems that are going to develop. And when they attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act, millions of Americans are going to be asking questions. Why are you doing this to us?
All right. Our thanks to Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. Thank you, sir, for joining us from Florida. We appreciate it. We'll have more on this story from